Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee meeting. It's the first one of the new year, so perhaps it's a bit late to say Happy New Year, but we'll say it anyway. Before we start, I'd like to welcome the chairman of the local branch of Unison, Tommy Draper, to this evening's meeting, and I thank Tommy in advance for his input on several of the items on this evening's agenda. Thank you. Right, item 1. Apologies for absence and substitutions.
Thank you, Chair. I've received no apologies tonight.
Thank you. Item 2, minutes of the last meeting, pages 1 to 10 of your agenda. Have you all had a chance to read them? Yep. Can we sign them off as correct record? Okay, I think Chris proposed. Gemma? Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. Can I please remind councillors to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registerable interests or non-registerable interests, and the nature of it in relation to any item on the agenda. Anybody got? Councillor Stevenson.
Just to say that I'm a member of the Communication Workers Union.
Thank you very much. No? Yep. Yes. Thank you. Item 4, questions on notice pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 38.
Thank you, Chair. I've received no such questions.
Thank you. Right, item 5, report of the Assistant Director, Finance and IT. A1, formal confirmation of council tax amounts for 2024-25, following the notification of the precepts from the major precepting authorities. And I believe that's going to be Richard Ball and Lewis, both of you, yeah? Thank you.
Thank you. This report represents the crucial but final stage of the budget setting cycle for 24-25. At full council on the 13th of February, Tendring District Council set its budget and its council tax for the year. And likewise, Essex County Council, Essex Police, Essex Fire, they've had their budget meetings, they've set their council tax and budgets for the year as well. And they've notified those amounts to us, which we collect through the council tax bills. This final stage basically just requires a formal confirmation of the figures. There isn't any choice to be made about the figures now because they've all been agreed by those authorities and us at full council. But it is required by legislation that confirmation occurs. So Appendix A is the same as Appendix H that went to full council on the 13th of February, but has had the police, county and fire precepts added to it. Appendix B is the same as Appendix I that went to full council on the 13th of February, which are the council tax amounts for tendering and the parish councils. And then Appendix C is the same as Appendix B but with the precepted amounts from county police and fire added on, which gives us the full council tax amounts for each area and each band of property in the district. Are there any questions?
No. Right, I need a proposer and a seconder then, please. Carla? Chris? Thank you. And do you all agree? Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Item 6, career track update. Now, I think that's Carol. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is really an opportunity for me to be able to give you an update and to give you some good news. And that's to say that we had an Ofsted inspection take place in November for our apprenticeship service, and I am delighted to formally report to this committee that we received a good rating. There was a delay in us being able to announce that because we have to wait until Ofsted publish it. It fell a little bit too close to Christmas for us to get it out that side of the new year, so it's had to wait until this side of the new year for that to be published. So just to give you a little bit of a background on that, as you know, Career Track provides apprenticeships for Tendring District Council and for another number of other authorities in Essex, Suffolk and Kent, and we work with a number of small business and small employers as well. The apprenticeships that we provide are mainly at level 2 in customer service, level 3 in business administration and also in customer service, and also a rather lengthy titled public, I have to read this one out because I always forget it, Public Service Operational Delivery Officer, which on a day-to-day basis we refer to by its initials as PSODO. So we received that inspection, and it covers 5 distinct areas. So they look at what they define as quality of education, behaviours and attitudes, personal development, leadership and management, and then the apprenticeships. And as I say, I'm delighted to say that we got a good on all 5 of those areas. So it's been a huge relief because we've introduced an awful lot of changes to be able to bring the standards up to those that were required from the previous inspection that we had. And I thought I'd take a moment or two just to read you a couple of little bits from that report so as you get a sense of what the Ofsted inspectors wrote. So they wrote that apprentices enjoy their learning and feel valued by staff whom they respect. Apprentices are highly motivated to successfully complete their training, and most make good progress. Apprentices develop a broad range of knowledge, transferable skills, and professional behaviours required to work successfully with colleagues and clients. This prepares them well to undertake a range of roles in the council departments where most are employed. As a result, most apprentices secure employment at the end of their apprenticeship. Apprentices develop confidence in communicating with clients and are proud of how their social skills have developed. Their organisational skills and resilience are developed through projects and events they manage, for example, organising and running a visit to a country park, visit to County Park Day for young people in care. I'll skip through a little bit because you don't need me to read it all to you. What I will very happily do is arrange for a copy of this to be circulated with the minutes so you can all see it. It said leaders have high expectations for their apprentices. They've developed ambitious programs that meets the needs of the employers it serves. Programs also provide a good route to employment and further training for local residents who have low prior educational achievement and or low ambition. Leaders and assessors work well with apprentices and employers to tailor courses to ensure that they best meet they don't have a lot of punctuation in these things. Best meet the needs and aspirations of the apprentices and relates well to their job roles. For example, apprentices develop soft skills in audit practices and data analytics. They also develop the technical skills to enable them to support clients off-site. It carries on. I'm not going to read out the entire thing. No one's perfect. There are a couple of things that we now need to work out for improving, so we've got a couple of things still to work on. We have regular what get called tripartite meetings, and they're meetings with the apprentice, the training provider, their tutor, and also with their employer. And we've had a few where the employer hasn't been present, and we need to try and work with employers to make sure that we get those meetings so that all 3 are involved fully, so the employers have even more in-depth understanding of some of the ways in which they can support their apprentice. We're going to work on further development for the teaching skills within the team. And we're also going to increase the number of observations that we have of the assessors doing their day-to-day work. We used to do that on a regular basis, and that's dropped off a little bit. So we're going to start to do a few more observations around that too. So they're the 3 areas in which we were picked up on for needing to do a little bit of improvement. But everything else, I'm delighted to say, was very, very positive. Just to bring you up to date, our current numbers, we've got 33 apprentices at the moment with Career Track, so the numbers are going up, and we've got another 4 about to start. So if I take the numbers as being 37, of those, 19 are within tendering district council and 18 are with other employers. So it's pretty much as close to 50-50 as we can get with an odd number. And the majority of those are doing a level 3. We've got 7 that are doing a level 2 in customer service, and the rest are working at a level 3 apprenticeship, either in one of those combination of qualifications that I read out previously. So I'll keep it short and sweet to that. I'm sure that sort of when we have our next meeting, I'll bring you more up to date with more things around apprenticeships, and I'll perhaps bring more of a focus onto some of the other apprenticeships that we have running for staff outside of Career Track. But for now, that's all I want to say. And as I say, I'll happily make sure that we get a copy of the inspection report shared with you all in the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And I'm sure the rest of the committee are going to agree. What a lot of hard work, but a very good result. So thank you very much. Carlo, have you got?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Carol, for the good news having shared that with the committee and indeed the outside world. I don't have any interest to declare on that, but I was involved in Career Track for many years, and I was part of the demoralising stage when Ofsted informed us that there were areas that needed to be addressed, and I can tell you, that was like dropping an absolute bomb on all the staff, and you had to really sympathise with the huge amount of work that went in during the COVID days, where really teaching was almost impossible to be carried out. That is a feat that has been achieved by the 5 main ladies that run the service. There's only 5 of them, and it's also quite good to point out that it's the only such scheme in the whole of Essex, and I believe even outside Essex you'd have to go a long way to search for one such as this one. I will not embarrass those people that have come out throughout the whole system that work for the organisation, but it is a huge area that given a tremendous opportunity to the people that have fallen out the education system, if you like, and get another bite of the cherry, but also to say that there are older students as well within the scheme as well, which give them another opportunity to retrain or get something else underway. But it is just like that. It's not often said the amount of effort that goes into ensuring that the service delivered. We has delivered for 41 years now. I think it's 41 years, and last year's 40th anniversary, we had the very first Career Track, the officer that's really delivered it all, and he was absolutely in awe of what had been done. So I welcome the excellent news that now has become public, and I really would like to commend the work that you ladies have done in ensuring that the survey not only overcame the comments from Ofsted, but also to put it in place. It's now got a really good structure. I know you'll be bringing back some more details. It's got proper governing body on it, and it's got wealth of members with various skills in that, which Carol has not really had a chance to allude to. But it's excellent, so well done. Thank you.
Yes, will you take all those comments back to your team, please, or all the ladies that have been working?
I will, with great pleasure.
Thank you. Item 7 is report of the Assistant Director Partnerships A2 Pay Policy Statement 2024 to 25, starting on pages 21 to 42, and I think that's Katie.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. The purpose of the report is to present the Council's draft pay policy statement for 24-25 for recommendation onto full Council for approval and adoption. So members may recall that the Localism Act 2011 requires us to prepare a pay policy statement each year. The pay policy statement must articulate the council's approach to a range of issues relating to the pay of its workforce. So looking at what you have in front of you, there is limited change reported in the statement, but I would like to highlight a number of exceptions. So the first is the pay award, which was agreed for 23-24 following agreement between national employers and national unions, where there are significant changes at the lower to mid end of the pay spine. And just to talk members through those, with effect from the 1st of April 2023, an increase of £1,925, which was prorated for part-time employees, was paid as a consolidated permanent addition to all NJC pay spines above 2 to 43 inclusive. So if we think about that in terms of monetary value, the latest pay award means that an employee at the bottom of the pay spine in April 2021, and in comparison, taking us forward to April 2023, they've received a total of £4,000 and 33 pence, and that's an increase of 22% in terms of that lower end of the pay spine. And just picking up on the midpoint of the pay spine, those officers in that area, their pay will have increased over the same period by £3,850, and that's 13.99%. So I just wanted to highlight that to members. The draft pay policy statement also includes reference to a number of updates to the council's allowances policy, which members of the committee agreed last February. And that's namely around the extension of emergency planning payments, which now extend beyond first call officers to staff supporting the authority's response, and also with reference to the allowance paid to officers attending committee meetings, and also the parameters in which those payments are applied. Finally, I'd like to draw members' attention to the reference to the updated statutory guidance with regard to special severance payments, and members are directed to the comments from the council's monitoring officer, and they can be found on page 24 of the agenda, and also members of the HR team, officers' subsequent response, which can be found on page 29, which outlines that having undertaken a light touch review of the authority's organisational change and flexible retirement policies, it is not considered that these policies require any further review at this time. Finally, I would just like to draw members' attention to the authority's latest reported gender pay gap position, which can be found on page 27 of the report pack. And I just want to highlight that our data demonstrates there is no material disparity at each pay level within the organisation, particularly when viewed within the context of the UK average, and the UK average was last reported as 14.3%. So you will see that our pay gap is very minimal. So the recommendations can be found on page 23 of the report pack. And it is recommended that the draft pay policy statement for 24-25, as set out in Appendix A, be endorsed by the committee and recommended onto full council for its approval and adoption. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions? Councillor Guglielmi.
Yes, thank you, Katie. Thank you for your report and for highlighting the main changes. Just got a couple of questions. I'm absolutely fine with the whole thing. One is on the acting up policy, which is work in progress, and that would be quite nice if you had anything you can share with us at this present time. And just one question on the on page 22, where it talks about 3.88% increase on all allowance. Does it mean allowance for? It doesn't include car allowance because that's set nationally, isn't it? So it's only for the allowance that the council does have with, am I correct?
Yes, so those allowances are things like standby, committee attendance. They will be increased by the 3.88%. So mileage, you're right, Councillor Guglielmi, we adopt the HMRC rates. And sorry, you had another question.
The acting up.
So the acting up policy, Carol and I are actually looking at that together. We just want to make sure that obviously it's as easy as possible for managers to be able to apply in their services, to make sure that we're giving people the opportunity when the opportunity arises, and that obviously people are sufficiently compensated. So that's currently on our sort of work programme.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm very happy to move that, and I would very much like to see that when he arrives, because there's been quite a lot of acting up and within the organisation. And just one comment on the gender pay gap, just with the exception of Mr. Tommy Draper, or ladies on that side, of officers supporting the the committee. So we've moved on a long, long way, you know, and I feel like within the minority now, you know. So well done for having achieved a huge exercise on that. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? No, Gary? No? Right, I believe, Carlo, you've proposed. I need a seconder then, please. Gemma? And do you all agree? Yep. Okay, thank you very much. Right, item 8 is the report of the Assistant Director Partnerships A3, proposed changes to how the Council uses the National Job Evaluation Scheme. Pages 43 to 54 of your agenda, and I believe this is Katie again.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to provide members of the committee with an update on some proposed changes to the Council's localised adoption of the National Job Evaluation Scheme. In the main, members will be aware that the conditions of employment with tendering district council, that those including pay, conform to those established for local government generally by the National Joint Council. The National Job Evaluation and Grading Scheme is used to determine job grades and pay levels for both new and existing posts, and is recognised by all parties as the only mechanism within the Council for determining the pay of all posts below Deputy Chief and Chief Officer levels. So the Council adopted the NJ Evaluation Scheme more than a decade ago, so it's been in place for some time now. And at the time, the Council applied a number of localised conventions, and these are local interpretations of wording of a job evaluation scheme. They're usually written down so that they can be applied consistently across all evaluations, and at the time they were negotiated and agreed upon with local union officials, so Tommy's Tommy's counterpart at the time. As part of the initial pay review research undertaken by East of England Local Government Association, the authority's use of the National Job Evaluation Scheme and also our localised conventions was reviewed to determine its suitability in terms of the national scheme and also TDC's employment offer amongst the wider job market. So are we making best use of, you know, our pay spine? So ELGA have advised that due to several updates to the national scheme, the majority of TDC's localised conventions may no longer be relevant, and that's because their wording is now incorporated within the national scheme. So in the majority of cases there's sort of duplication of wording. So therefore the authority is proposing to remove the reference to localised conventions and replace them with the use of the National Joint Council Factor Plan and also the Factor Guidance. And just to draw members' attention to the factor details can be found in Appendix A3, and that's from page 51 of the report pack. So members will be able to see those factors on which the scoring is applied as you go through the job evaluation scheme. So ELGA has further recommended that the Council adopt the use of something called an assessment tool for responsibility factors. And that looks at, in particular, advisory, policy, and equivalent sort of hands-off responsibilities, which have been introduced as part of the updated national scheme. So several key officers, including HR officers, managers, and Tommy joined us, have undertaken the training by East of England LGA, and that focused on the updates to the national scheme, including those responsibility factors and their application. So the transition to the updated scheme can be achieved successfully. That training has already taken place. So we also regularly do refresher training on the scheme, so that will continue to be delivered to any officers that are undertaking evaluations on behalf of the authority to ensure that we remain compliant with the scheme's requirements. It should be noted, and this is really important, that the proposal does not impact any existing job evaluation outcomes or grades of posts. So there will be no changes in terms of the outcome of the evaluation process if we remove our localised conventions. This approach, once adopted, will be used to assist with future job evaluations to ensure that our application of the National Job Evaluation Scheme continues to be robust. So, on top of job evaluation, we also undertake a comprehensive local moderation process to ensure that after the evaluation, the outcome fits within the structure of the organisation. That will continue. We'll also continue with our current practice in line with identified best practice of looking at least 20% of our jobs for job evaluation purposes year on year to make sure that they remain correct. So the recommendations can be found on page 44 of the report pack, and I'd just like to go through these, if I may, Chair. It's recommended that the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee approve the proposed removal of the localised conventions as outlined in the National Job Evaluation Scheme and Guidance with TDC Local Conventions document, in line with the recommendations made by ELGA. The use of the updated National Job Evaluation Scheme, including the assessment tool for responsibility factors for future evaluations, and also the need, should it arise, to revisit amended localised conventions, if recommended by ELGA, upon conclusion of the comprehensive review of the authority's pay line, which is currently being undertaken at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Carver. Right.
Thank you. You say about the removal of the local conventions, but it may be necessary to reintroduce them at a future date. So the local conventions as are presently in position are being removed because they are no longer relevant, is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor Calver. That's absolutely correct. So at the moment, where we are currently, the localised conventions, a lot of that wording that was used to just provide additional context, that now exists within the national scheme. So the localised conventions that we put in place to make sure the evaluation process was explained to those undertaking evaluations, that's now been incorporated in line with the national scheme. So where we are now, I didn't want to completely discount the use of localised conventions because of the pay review that's currently being undertaken. If we get that independent advice that says, actually, in the context of you making sure that you meet the sort of job market, and we're able to retain staff, etc., if there were certain recommendations made,
Right. Yes. Sorry.
Yes, thank you, Katie, again, and thank you, Madam Chairman, for letting me in. My question is around about on whether the evaluation scheme applies to on the level of equality with people with special needs or disabilities there's a section in there that kind of deals with some of the, you know, that kind of fields. But I just like to understand, does that apply to both, you know, to everyone?
I'll come in first, Councillor Guglielmi, and if I may, I think Carol's desperate to say something. I can feel her on her button.
I was just going to cover it in case you wanted to break, that was all.
So I think it's really important to note that the job evaluation scheme is based on post. So it's not person, it's position within the structure. So obviously a job is evaluated based on its position in the structure and you know, on the basis of the requirements that are outlined for that post. So it's not people specific. So, and one of the reasons it's not people specific is so that there is that, you know, equality for all. It's based on, you know, sort of assessment criteria rather than person. Did you want to come in, Carol?
No, you've said exactly what I was going to say. I was just going to come in and give you a break, actually. That was all.
Anastasia's going to come in though instead.
Thank you, Councillor Guglielmi. I was just going to mention that we have a job interview guarantee scheme as well for people who have got disabilities. So if they actually say on their application form that they've got a disability, then we've got, as I say, that job interview guarantee. We also work closely with the DWP. If we need particular advice and support, we've got occupational health as well. So we adapt however we need to adapt, you know, to accommodate any issues when we're going through the recruitment process. I mean, even just thinking about our apprenticeship scheme, one of Carol's assessors is specially trained when it comes to special educational needs, so we can give more time for particular assessments and things like that. But as I say, this particular report just focuses on the actual job. When it comes to the individual, there's a lot of support that we can put in place. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought that was the case. I just really wanted to be clear that that is the format, and it goes to the evaluation, because obviously the council's got to give regard to the Equality Act and all the public sector equality duty and things like that. And I just really, that is the template, if you like, for all, and that's what we're approving with the minor changes that you just talked about. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? Right, the proposal, the recommendations are on page 44, so I need a proposer and a seconder, please. Right. And second? Pam? Okay, and do you all agree? Thank you very much. Do you want to have a quick drink, Katie, because you've got to start again? Item 9. Report of the Assistant Director Partnerships A4 Employment Legislation Update, and it's pages 55 to 60. And that's Katie. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is just to provide members of the committee with an update on several key changes that are coming up in terms of employment legislation in the UK throughout 2024. So the focus is on family-related policies, protection from harassment, and also reforms in flexible and predictable working. So the council aims to lead by example as a major employer, and this includes following recognised best practices and ensuring obviously full compliance with employment legislation. And I just want to bring to members' attention that obviously examples of this are, we are a disability confident leader, as Anastasia just said, and we are also an employer recognition scheme gold award holder, one of few in the area, and both of these commit the authority to being an advocate in terms of best practice and these areas. So the full details of the changes coming up can be found in the report's executive summary, but I thought it'd just be useful for me to just run through them for members of the committee. So the changes relate to holiday pay and working time for workers. So what the legislation seeks to do is simplify the calculation of leave for workers, And also those people that are on a casual contract that aren't employees, they also now will have the right to request a more predictable contract, so a more predictable working arrangement. Amendments to the Equality Act have been made. They came into play in January this year, and they relate to various rights and principles of equality and discrimination law. And as I say, full details can be found in the executive summary. Fathers and partners can now split their statutory paternity leave into 2 separate weeks within 12 months of birth or placement. So that's a key change. And also employees can now request flexible working from day one of employment. Previously, there was a timescale that you had to be in employment before you could make that request. The minimum wage for apprentices will rise with effect from April 2024. And pregnant employees and those on family leave will have additional protections in relation to redundancy situations. And all employees will be entitled to 1 week of unpaid carers leave per year to support, any members of their family that they need to care for. Finally, the introduction of a new legal duty on employers to prevent sexual harassment comes into place. So that's to prevent sexual harassment in the workplace. It should be noted that the authority already takes a very strong position in this regard. So the recommendations can be found on page 56 of the report pack, and I'll just read those out again. Thank you. It is recommended that the committee notes the contents of the report, including the anticipated changes that will be made to the authority's people policies and procedures by the Assistant Director Partnerships in consultation with the chair of the committee. So members of the committee will just know that Anastasia has delegated authority to make changes to people policies and procedures in line with her delegations and changes to legislation and identified best practice. So we will make those changes to the relevant people policies and procedures, but make sure that the chair of the HR committee is consulted. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a question. Flexible working right, or the changes, are they for new employees or for existing ones also?
So it will be for all employees, and it will be a day one right. So anybody joining the organisation as an employee will have that right to request a flexible working arrangement.
Are there, Councillor?
Mine is also on the flexible workings. Just probably not relevant to this report, but whilst we're talking about it, would you have figures of the percentage of splits of people working flexible time from home and away from the workplace? And my second question is the prevention of sexual harassment. You're absolutely right. The authority has always had a very strong line on understanding, and safeguarding that. But is there a duty now that managers have to take mandatory training in order to be able to recognise and to prevent that?
Thank you, Councillor Guglielmi. So in terms of the harassment, there will be certain training that has to take place. There's certain policies and procedures that employers are expected to adopt in line with the ACAS framework. So, as I say, the authority is kind of ahead in terms of our obligations. We already do a significant amount of work, to make sure that our managers are very aware of what should be happening. If there is a concern, we have a very robust set of, policies and procedures. So we've done a lot of work in that regard to make sure we safeguard our employees. But we will make sure, there's always room for improvement, I'm sure, and we will make sure that obviously we continue to review our policies and procedures to ensure that we reflect best practice in that regard. Sorry, you had another question as well.
If not totally relevant to the report, but as is mentioned, I would ask a question. what is the split of people working flexible from home and in the workplace?
So, members may be aware that the authority has adopted a remote working policy, and that looks at hybrid working arrangements. And so there will be an expectation that staff spend some time, if they're office based, they will spend some time in the office and sometimes at home. Each individual, you know, the general rule is 2 in the office, Carol, 3 at home, but everybody's different. And I think what we've done is made sure that that policy can be applied flexibly to ensure that we are supporting each individual. There will be some people that like to come into the workplace every day. Of course, they're able to do that, you know, and there'll be others that want a bit more flexibility in terms of working, you know, more remotely from home. But we've done a lot of work around implementing that policy, training our managers again, making sure that our managers know how to manage remote teams, making sure that teams are able to work together in that different way of working. So I don't think I could say to you, Councillor Guglielmi, that there's a set, you know, this is a set percentage, because I think we are so flexible with it within a given framework. I'd just like to hand over to Carol too, because she was the author of that policy. So I don't want to have missed anything.
I think you covered it extremely well, Katie. I'm not sure there's a great deal that I need to add, really. We're very keen to make sure that staff are able to work as flexibly in terms of that hybrid way of working as meets the needs of them, their circumstances, and the circumstances that are required of the organisation. We apply that broad brush of saying roughly for a full-time equivalent, you know, 2 in the office, 3 at home. It varies enormously dependent upon service need, dependent upon the individual. I think on average that is roughly how people are working it. But I know, sort of from personal experience and also from, you know, numerous colleagues, there are a lot who choose to come in full time and are working every day in the office. There are many who might choose to only have 1 day when they work from home. And there are many that will come and, as I say, alter that according to service need. So having put all the work in, and we did an awful lot of work around flexible working in that sense and hybrid working, actually pre-COVID, because we were already moving in that direction. COVID fast-tracked us, there's no doubt about that. You know, but I think actually we were already in a strong position for staff being ready and able to start to work in that different way. And it's been, I would say, very successful.
Yeah, I remember reading the home working policy back in 2017, 2018, I think I was, when you were working. And another reason I asked that, it's to understand, because during the transformation project, you were obviously part of the panel that oversaw the transformation council, and to understand what the space needed for the organisation was. Because the time was kind of quite challenging to work out. As you said, COVID fast-tracked everything, and it'd be quite interesting to understand how much space there is now, office space. You know, from what you say, it's kind of more or less predicted to post-COVID people coming back, and it suits some but not others. And so it'll be quite, I don't think it's a remit of this committee particularly, but because obviously that's more of a, you know, asset management things. But nevertheless, it'd be quite nice to understand the amount of space that there is now, that things seem to settle down quite well, and maybe a verbal update in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just really going to add to what Carol and Katie have just said, but also we have been very fortunate as an employer, because, you know, after the pandemic, people have come back into the workplace. And I know a lot of employers have really struggled to get staff back in. So I think we've sort of slipped into the hybrid working, you know, quite seamlessly. The other thing just to mention is obviously you've got to look at the job roles as well, because for some jobs people have to be in the workplace. You know, if they're a lifeguard or something like that, you know, they've got to be in. so we have to be sort of realistic in terms of obviously the needs of the organisation. But I just really wanted to reflect, you know, that the transformation work, the work that, you know, Katie and Carol have put in terms of that hybrid working, obviously working with Tommy as well, that I think that has been very successful after the pandemic. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Right, your recommendation is on page 56, so can I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Second? Okay. And do you all agree? Thank you very much. Right. Item 10. Item 10, exclusion of press and public. I am on the right bit, aren't I? Yes. Yeah, the committee is requested to consider passing the following resolution under section 100A bracket 4 of the Local Government Act 1972. The press and public be excluded from the meeting during consideration of agenda item 11 on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 3 and 4 of part 1 schedule 12A as amended of the Act. I do need a proposer and a seconder, please. Jen? And you agree? Thank you. We will just wait a minute while they turn.